picture of your mom. What was that called?
Spirit Lake?
Spirit Lake. She's in Uncle Everett's boat.
While most Toutle residents say they're not frightened of the future, they know by now how unpredictable that mountain can be.
All who were there in the Northwest that day can still answer the question, where were you when the mountain blew?
All right, everybody, I am here at the North Clark Historical Museum today. I made a special reservation because they're only open a couple times a week. I came in on one of those days that they were open, and I told them that I was working on a video for my channel, and they were nice enough to reserve a time for me to come in during the week and show me everything related to the 1980 eruption. So I'm gonna go inside and chat with the nice ladies in here. Hello.
Hi, I'm April.
Hi, April. And what was your name again, ma'am?
Georgene.
Georgene. Georgene, you said you guys have some sort of event, an annual event around the 1980 eruption?
In May, we have an exhibit here.
Okay.
We have at times in the past actually had a speaker and did a whole program.
Oh.
But we don't always do that. If
I
it's
see.
kind of an anniversary thing, we do that. But otherwise, we just do an exhibit.
Okay. And so these are displayed on that exhibit?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't
Yes.
put it all out. Sometimes we put it all out.
I see. Okay. Did you say your dad was in the area
Yes,
that day?
they lived out on Schlachey Prairie. And
Okay.
they had an airstrip out there. And so he went up in the plane and took pictures with my husband and was probably too close.
Yeah.
And there were other pilots that did that. I ran a publisher of the Loggers World magazine said his dad did the same thing. And, yeah. They were curious.
Wow.
But Dad has, I've got some that looks kind of like this.
First started opening up.
Yeah, those are some that my dad got before it erupted. And then this was some of the stuff afterwards. Well, this was March.
Sleeping Beauty wakes up eruption, opens vent at summit of Mount Saint Helens. Aerial view above the clouds reveals widening of vent with gray ash dusting the snow-covered mountain. So it blew in May, right? May
Yeah,
18.
May.
So this is March. We have that opening. April, you can see a widening of the area up there. And then this is after here.
This would be
Photos
from a
taken-
similar area.
I see, okay.
And
Four
now it's even
corners.
more grown.
Yeah. Soon after the eruption here.
Yeah.
And then this is 2012. So you can see some of that regrowth.
The note is something I wrote to my in-laws back in Nebraska.
Oh, really?
And my husband was working in the woods. And of course couldn't work. And so they had to, afterwards they had to have permits to go into certain places. I finally figured out how they were deciding what was the red zone that nobody could go into. And the ranger got out a picture of a mountain that looked like Mount Saint Helens. It was in Japan. It had had a lateral explosion. It looked just like the north side of Mount St. Helens does now. And that's how they were judging how far out it would blow out. Well, it blew out a lot farther.
Farther than
Yeah. My family had friends who lived near the Toutle River.
Oh, yeah. Here's
And I meant to try and talk to them. I actually did go to their house. But they didn't want to participate in the video just because they literally lost their house.
Yeah.
during that
yeah,
eruption.
that was very traumatic.
Yeah.
And it, you know, she's done that sort of thing before where she's
Yeah.
shared her stories, but she's done it so many times and every time it brings back
Back,
that
yeah.
day.
Right.
And it's just too tough to try and relive
Yeah.
that. So.
Well, it was pretty scary because, I mean, the loggers were pushing back.
residents dig out
Yeah.
mud and debris from living areas.
Yeah.
Spirit Lake in the midst of a devastated area. There's the lake. 2 to 3 feet of mud and muck invaded many homes.
So that would have been one where your friends found it.
By the Toutle,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
that area.
It needs to be brought all the way out so we
Okay.
can turn it
Would
around.
it be okay if I handled it?
Yes.
Okay. Can I slide this
You
one
can.
out first?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
That would be fine. We just have it. We don't have any place to really put them, so
Right.
we kind of had them stored there.
Wow. Look at the size of this thing.
Yeah. When you were up at Spirit Lake, campground's over here.
Mhm.
So if you went out in a boat and then you turned around, there was the mountain just like
Yeah. Wow.
right in your face. So these are some pictures they found later that this guy took.
Oh, really?
And he died in the blast.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was in his car. And then they found these pictures. I don't know if they were on his camp. I don't know where they found them. But
With the wreckage, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
man.
And then eventually they got him off. So then they did that. So
Columbia newspaper photographer Reed Blackburn was on assignment with National Geographic and the U.S. Geological Survey. While camping at the USGS observation post, his task was to operate 2 radio-triggered cameras to record simultaneous images of significant volcanic events. Blackburn was due to come down on Saturday, May 17th, but he decided to finish his assignment and stay a few more days. As the lateral blasts burst out of the mountainside, Blackburn fired 4 frames, then fled to his car for shelter, where his body was later found. Reed Blackburn's camera was retrieved from his car. Sadly, the film was too badly damaged to yield any images of the tragic events. In April of 1980, Colombian photographer Reed Blackburn returned from a flight around a rumbling Mount Saint Helens and set aside a roll of film. That undeveloped roll of film inadvertently spent the next 3 decades in a film canister inside a storage box. In 2013, the Columbia newspaper was electrified when Reed Blackburn's undeveloped roll of film was discovered. As word spread of the photo's discovery, a regional story became international news.
The blast was so forceful, it collapsed one side of the mountain, and it killed 57 people. Faye Blackburn worked at the Columbia newspaper in Vancouver at the time. Her husband, Reed Blackburn, worked there too, as a staff photographer.
So I don't think any of us were all that worried that it would kill as many people. The scientists themselves never expected a lateral blast. I don't think it could be foreseen by anyone.
The photo's discovery became the most read article of 2013 on thecolumbian.com, crushing the second place story by over 50,000 webpage views. The outpouring of interest demonstrates the importance of Mount Saint Helens as a historical landmark. As we pause to reflect on Reed Blackburn, we also remember where we were and what we were doing on May 18th, 1980. What if Mount Saint Helens had erupted in a different direction? Measured to see how close the blast area would come to our community. What would happen to the dams on the Lewis River? Each mark is 5 miles.
Yeah, I think that's what I said. It went out from here that far, so if you go from here and go about 10 miles, you're down right into Cougar. And
Oh man, yeah, it would have been devastating.
yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar with this area, Portland, Oregon is right down here, and the Columbia River divides Oregon and Washington. And Mount Saint Helens is in Washington, just north of Portland. And so when it blew out the north side and everything flowed in that direction, a less populated area. And so what April was saying is that if it would have come this direction towards Portland, could have been a lot more destructive when it comes to homes and human life. And it still was, despite the fact that there were less people up there. Doesn't mean that there weren't a lot of people who were directly affected by it. So they've got some photos here before the eruption, during the eruption, and there's some after. This is a cool one here. The regrowth. That one is epic right there. You got the crater of Mount Saint Helens and then Mount Hood. I think that's Mount Hood off in the distance, right? What is this here? bread crust, you
They
said?
call it a bread crust bomb. It's pumice.
Oh, from the...
Mountain.
Okay. As the interior gas bubbles continue to expand, cracks form on the surface. Presented to Barbara Wagner by U.S. Geological Survey.
Yeah, it goes right in there.
Right there. Oh. I wasn't sure.
We haven't run this for quite a while.
I know.
Oh yeah, that's
I think it's starting.
throwback.
Mount Saint Helens.
Just want to see if I can get shots of the eruption.
The eruption of Mount Saint Helens captures the headlines of America and beyond. All who were there in the Northwest that day can still answer the question, where were you when the mountain blew?
Does it have a date on that? 77.
77.
We bought the property, I think, in 76.
Okay.
And one summer, we decided we weren't doing baseball, we weren't doing softball, we were going up and building the cabin. And then we did the same thing when we decided that we needed to refurbish the cabin. We didn't do stuff that summer. We went up and dug out from underneath the cabin, because the main structures, the beams underneath were rotten. See where the cabin was up here?
Yeah.
We used to park our motorcycles underneath it. There was a front deck on the cabin too. Went around a tree.
And then after the mountain blew, all of that just filled right
Built
up.
right in. It looked like some idiot built that deck right on the Pummy, because that deck just rotted off. And so we had to jack it up. We had to dig it out. And Grandpa made 5-gallon buckets, his pier blocks, 5-gallon buckets with cement in them, and put new structure underneath, and that was his pier blocks. Because we didn't have any equipment, and that was before Janelle met Tim, and we didn't have anything.
Yeah.
We had a shovel.
76, 77. Mom was 7, 8 years old.
And we had this little tiny trailer that we stayed in while we were building the cabin. Of course, we had to get poles. Everybody called them pecker poles because they were little. That's the van that we had. This is after we're redoing it.
And how did Grandpa get the 5-gallon bucket concrete blocks under there? You just had to dig it out and then crawl under there?
And then get them under there.
Yeah.
Well, and the floor was rotten on the inside, so we had the floor out.
Oh.
This is a picture of your mom. This is the lake up there. What was that called?
Spirit Lake?
Spirit Lake. She's in Uncle Everett's boat. And we were on Spirit Lake.
77.
This is a scooter they found, and they'd go up the top of the hill. You know, that barn isn't there anymore, but that old mobile home was up there. It'd start at the top and just grinning from ear to ear coming down that hill. Having a ball. But it had no motor or nothing, just wheels. And they would run after each other, and oh my gosh, they had so much fun up there. It just have so many good memories. And then that's a swing set that Dad built before the mountain blew. And there's a swing set after the mountain blew. See how it was tall? See how the swings were buried in the muck. Yeah. It's really fun having the comparison pictures of, like I said, some idiot built his deck because the other one was really buried.
Yeah. So that's Mom.
Jeff, Jennifer, and Christy, and Steve. That's Doug's kids.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm just so thankful that the cabin was able to make it through the mountain blowing, because imagine if it would have gotten wiped out. All the time that I spent up there, Morgan, Adam, Amanda, all the memories that we made up there, that we wouldn't have been able to do that if we lost that place.
Yeah.
The unincorporated community of Toutle is home base for some 3,000 people who live in the valley. It's the only population center threatened should there be mudflows or flooding from the northern flank of the mountain. While most Toutle residents say they're not frightened of the future, they know by now how unpredictable that mountain can be. So, within the privacy of their own homes, many are preparing for the worst.
So this here is the Toutle River, and my family's cabin is up the hill there. And after the mountain blew, this was a river of logs and debris.
Only those things that cannot be replaced will go, if the Fosters decide to go. Like other Toutle residents, Bea and Paul are ready, but spend little time in waiting. Reporting from Toutle, this is Robin Anderson, Channel 2 News.
So I want to go to this bridge that you were talking about, just past Joyce and Floyd's house.
It's a new bridge now.
So I believe this is one of the bridges that my grandma was referring to. Oh, yep, look at this. Highway 504, mile marker 10, 1982. So the mountain blew in 1980, and this was rebuilt afterwards. So, yep, I think this is that bridge that my grandma has photos of the Toutle River being so full that this bridge got wiped out.
Because you couldn't drive because there was no bridge. The bridge was taken out by logs, logging trucks, any of that stuff that had been up above that they were logging came down the river and just wiped it out. This is down where we used to swim, and that river just, I mean, it became just mud and debris and logs. It was bad, really bad. As you can see, this is the neighbor's house that we're back behind the cabin. You could get down on your hands and knees and look through the top of the patio door. It was L-shaped house, and you can see, okay, on here, this is Bill, you can see on here where the water was up here, and then it started drying out and receded down to here. And see, but this end is practically buried because of the way it was built, L-shaped. That force hit it and just buried this. This is Joyce and Floyd's house. Yeah, and they weren't real close to the river, but they were close enough for that to happen. And what happened was the log jam built up in the river down here steered, we got the backwater that filled up under the cabin, but they got the brunt of it all because this log jam built up and then it went past us and hit them.
Hello, hello. Catching up on the news?
Yeah, I was going to watch the weather.
Okay.
See what's coming next. Yeah, so I kind of collected.
Oh, okay. So this,
Oh,
I
that's
wonder.
when the bridge came down, yeah. It was happened on a Sunday, I believe, the eruption. And that weekend I was out in Central Oregon at the Ty Valley Rodeo. And we were headed back on Sunday. We stopped up at Timberline Lodge in Oregon, on Mount Hood, because the girl I was with had never been up there. So we stopped up there to see the lodge and stuff. And that's where I heard that it erupted. So we left, and I made it back here in record time in an old Datsun pickup.
You heard from other people that
I don't know, we heard on the radio or something. We probably had the radio on, listening to music or something. Somehow I heard about it. So I headed right back, got down here to the corner down there on the west end of the prairie, where the old gas station used to be. And they had a roadblock set up there, and weren't letting anybody through. But I could almost see my property from there. I said to the guy, I just live right up there. I'm not going any further. I just want to go up there. And he said, no, I can't let anybody through. And then there's people piling up behind me, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. And he went to talk to somebody else, and I just took off. And then there was another guy a few hundred feet further, and I said, "Oh, the guy behind me just said it's okay. I'm just going right up there." So I drove through the 2 roadblocks and got up here. There was another friend of mine that was already up here waiting for me. The father of the girl I'd been with, I dropped her off already before. He was sitting up here waiting for me. And so we hiked up the hill to the ridge. We had a great view of the mountain. We just sat there in awe, watching. Luckily the ash and everything was going the other way, so it was a clear view of everything right there. You could see the lightning coming down, and we were out of beer. So he was riding a motorcycle, so we came back down, and I said, "Well, there's roadblocks down there. You can't get through to go to the store." And he said, "No problem." He was Native American, by the way, just about full-blood Choctaw, I believe, and a little crazy. So anyway, he took his bike to the store, got a case of beer and a pound of hamburger, came back, and we went back up there and barbecued hamburgers and drank beer and just sat and watched until it got too dark to see anything. It's something you can never forget. Couldn't really feel anything or hear much. There was, background kind of a roar, I guess, but it was mostly just visual. And it was covered the whole sky. Except it didn't quite come over where we were, luckily. Sorry. We didn't get any ash from the main eruption, but in the weeks following, there were a lot of minor eruptions, and we got a lot of ash from that. And you can still see it in some of the trees. There were a lot of young alder then, 43 years ago. Yeah, there were a lot of alder, about 2-3 inches thing. And it just, the ridge, when the ash first came down, it was dry and light in one of the after eruptions. But then it rained, and all the trees were covered with ash, but the rain just turned it into like concrete. It was really heavy, and the alders just bent right over, and the tops touched the ground. And I couldn't get out the driveway for quite a while, because it was just, all the trees are bent right over.
Wow.
And you can still see the curves in the trees somewhere. They like have an S curve. They've been over, and then they started growing up again.
Oh.
And I can show you some of the trees that you can still tell.
Really?
But I think the most ash we got was maybe 2 or 3 inches, and then went down a bit when it rained. But that stuff was heavy. Yuck.
Wow.
This was up in Cougar. This is some of the stuff that came out of the mountain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pumice.
Oh.
It's just really light. It'll float if you throw it in the water.
Oh, my, yeah. It weighs nothing.
But,
so that was up by Cougar that you got that?
Yeah, I think I got these from Cougar. I got a jar full of ash somewhere.
Oh, really?
I was looking for it, and I couldn't find it.
Oh.
I think I still have some. But we were up in Cougar a week or 2 later after the main eruption. And we were at the tavern up there, and it was after dark, kind of late at night. And somebody came into the bar and said, "Oh, it's another eruption. It's coming down. And we went outside in the street, and things this size were just kind of floating down.
What?
And you could go out and catch them as they were floating down. Because they're so light, they just, yeah.
Wow.
And the mountain was just spitting them out and dropping them right on Cougar. That was crazy. Yeah, it's a once in a lifetime thing.
May 18th, 1980. Where was I when the mountain blew? Well, that was 12 years before I was born, so I was not even a thought in my parents' mind when the mountain blew. But as you've now seen, I have a close connection to that event because my family on my mom's side owned and still owns a cabin along the Toutle River, which is a significant landmark when it comes to that 1980 eruption of the mountain. And being a Pacific Northwest native, growing up here, being here most of my life, and now finding myself in a position where I'm creating and editing videos, it just felt natural to one day make a video about the eruption. So that's what I've done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I actually spoke to even more people than you just saw.
I worked up in the Mount Saint Helens area before and after the eruption.
The force took it over us, and most of it went the other direction.
And being so close, 11 miles, you know, as a crow flies from the mountain. And she came down and told us, she goes, the mountain erupted.
That's the one thing I really remember was the cow, I remember, was just covered with ash.
The cow.
It was just incredible how the blowdown was, because the giant trees just literally looked like matchsticks laying all in one direction.
But I'm learning that when it comes to video editing and creating videos that have to do with historical events, it's very difficult to tell a story very concisely and clearly. And unfortunately, I'm not going to include the long form versions of all of the interviews because I decided to make some creative decisions and just boil it down to those few conversations that I had. But I really appreciate everyone who was a part of my video, including my grandma, the super kind folks at the North Clark Historical Museum, neighbor Al, of course, my stepdad Tim, and his siblings and family members, Aunt Gayla, Aunt Renee, and Grandma Faye. I hope you learned a little bit from this video about the eruption, and there's so much more that you can learn from other great videos that people have made. There's so much information about the eruption. Of course, I can't cover all of that. That's one of the reasons why I didn't include all of the interview footage, because it's like, man, you could go. So my stepdad was a logger, and I could make a whole hour-long video on logging the aftermath of the eruption, before the eruption, all of that. And there's many much more famous things, like the story of Harry R. Truman and the Spirit Lake Lodge, and how he refused to leave the lodge and he passed away that day and the whole lodge was wiped out. There's lots of stories that have been told about that event and what happened with Harry Truman. So I recommend you go and look that up because it's really, really fascinating. But this is the best that I could do with the skills and ability that I currently have within me. I just decided, you know what, if I'm going to make a video about the mountain, I'm just going to talk to everyone that I know that was there that day that has a story to tell. And I'm going to do my best to just ask very simple questions and for the most part just sit and listen and absorb. And I want to dedicate this video to my late grandfather, Ed Huffman, who passed away recently. It was because of him and everything that he did throughout his life, including building the cabin along the Toutle River, building not just one, but two houses that I was partially raised in because of those things that he did for his family, which then ultimately ended up being me, his grandchild, and our family as a whole. He did so much for us, and we miss you, Grandpa. I really appreciate the hard work and the things that you did throughout your life to create the opportunity for all of those memories up at the cabin to be made, and all the time that we spent with you. We miss you and we love you, and I hope that if you were to see this video somehow, you would enjoy it and appreciate it. So thanks, as always, everyone, for watching. I am going to get back to working on projects up at the cabin, helping Al with some projects that he's got going on, and more straightforward type of videos that are much easier to put together and edit.
This is how I like to cut wood. Sit, drink beer.
Anyways, thanks as always for watching, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.